On the last week of May 2026, Bigfoot didn't just take 8 hikers from Ohio's state forests, he brutalized each one. But the evidence left behind tells me Bigfoot wasn't just hunting, he was doing far worse. That's what keeps me up at night. Not that a Sasquatch killed them, but that something in Ohio made him do it this way. On the South Loop Trail of Zaleski State Forest, the victim was Jenna, 35, an experienced solo hiker whose call log showed she'd walked these ridges over 200 times. Her phone survived, and what it recorded is the first hard evidence that something in Ohio has changed. Jenna was filming a video blog for her outdoor channel, the camera steady as she pointed out a creek crossing and the way the trail bent around a stand of mature oak. 6 minutes in, she stopped talking about the route. She mentioned the quiet instead, not the normal stillness of deep woods, but a dead silence where no birds called and no insects buzzed. I reconstructed her path from the GPS metadata. She was roughly 4 miles from the parking lot when she tilted her head and whispered into the microphone that the sound she just heard wasn't any bird. It was knocking, wood on wood. That knocking is the first sign of Bigfoot. Jenna kept the phone up. She panned left, then right, then left again. Between 2 massive oaks about 40 yards off the trail, the shadows seemed to thicken. Then the shape resolved itself. A dark, hunched figure stood motionless, its shoulders clearing the lower branches at roughly 8.5 feet. The fur matched the bark so perfectly that the eye rejected the outline at first. Jenna laughed. She said it was probably just a bear, but her breathing had already changed. Shorter inhales, longer exhales, the body preparing for flight. She kept recording for 12 more seconds, just her breath and the faint rustle of her jacket. Then the forest answered. A low, guttural whoop erupted from directly behind her, so close that the phone's microphone peaked into distortion. Bigfoot that had been standing between the oaks hadn't moved. That meant a second Bigfoot had circled behind Jenna while she watched the first one. The whoop lasted 2 full seconds, a sound that vibrates through the audio file like a diesel engine revving inside a concrete room. The phone flew upward. Jenna never screamed. The video shows a spinning blur of leaves and sky, and then a massive fur-covered arm reaching through the frame from the bottom edge. That arm belonged to Bigfoot behind her. From the scale of the oak leaves in the background, I calculated the arm's length at over 5 feet from shoulder to knuckle. The fingers were already curling into a fist. The arm wasn't grabbing, it was swinging. The video cut to black, but the audio continued for another 47 minutes. The first sound after impact was a wet crack, the same forensic signature I've heard in cases where a human skull meets a steel beam at speed. Jenna's breathing stopped instantly. Then came the heavy drag. Bigfoot pulled her body across the forest floor, the phone recording every root snag and every rock scrape. Each dragging interval lasted roughly 8 seconds, followed by 2 seconds of silence, where I could hear Bigfoot adjusting its grip. The huffing was rhythmic, 1 exhale every 3 seconds, the lung capacity of an animal that weighed well over 600 pounds. 23 minutes into the audio, a second Bigfoot vocalized from the east. The whoop was lower in pitch, almost interrogative. The first Bigfoot answered with a series of short grunts, and the dragging changed direction. The body was being pulled toward the second Bigfoot. I mapped the change in ambient sound, more leaf litter, fewer stones, and determined that the new heading was downhill, toward a ravine that local hunters avoid because dogs refuse to enter it. 31 minutes in, the dragging stopped. Bigfoot huffed 3 times in quick succession, and then I heard the unmistakable sound of something large feeding in the dark, not tearing, not chewing. The audio showed a pattern of sustained, wet ripping, followed by 2 seconds of swallowing, then another rip. Each rip lasted approximately 4 seconds. The consistency suggests Bigfoot was opening the chest cavity. A human body has natural separation points between the ribs. Bigfoot knew exactly where to pull. At 39 minutes, the feeding paused. Bigfoot made a sound I can only describe as a low, vibrating hum, something between a growl and a purr. Then the second Bigfoot approached. I could hear its footsteps, each one separated by a 6-foot stride, the weight-crushing leaves with a dull crunch. The 2 Bigfoot vocalized back and forth for nearly 2 minutes. The first one's hum dropped in pitch. The second one answered with a series of soft clicks. Then they both fed at the same time. The audio became a stereo field of wetwork, ripping on the left channel, crunching on the right, the 2 Bigfoot working opposite ends of the same body. 44 minutes. One of Bigfoot stepped directly onto the phone. The microphone compressed into the soil and the audio turned muffled and distant, but it still recorded. For the final 3 minutes, I heard Bigfoot dragging something heavier than a single body. The second Bigfoot had joined the pull, their footsteps synchronized, the weight distribution suggesting they were carrying Jenna's remains between them. Then the audio ended. They had moved beyond the phone's range, deeper into the ravine. The phone was found 3 days later, crushed but recoverable. Jenna's body has never been located. She was the first of 8 in 5 days. Something is happening in Ohio, and Bigfoot is no longer content to knock on trees and fade into the bark. In the Pleasant Hill Dam area of Mohican Memorial State Forest, the second-day victims were 3 15-year-olds, Caleb, Mia, and Jordan, out for a birthday hike on a sunny October afternoon. Their case holds the strangest evidence I've reviewed. Not a single frame of trail cam footage shows the teenagers themselves. Instead, the cameras captured Bigfoot walking toward an empty forest, and yet the physical remains tell a story of 3 people being eaten alive right there. The hunter's cellular trail cam was strapped to a tree overlooking a creek bed, aimed at a sycamore and a patch of ferns. 6 seconds of footage, no audio. Second one shows an empty forest, the sycamore's white bark standing out against the brown undergrowth. Second 2, a massive dark shape begins to emerge from behind the sycamore, moving with a slow, deliberate care that suggests Bigfoot knew exactly where the camera was. The color is gray-brown, the fur matted in patches like wet bark. Second 3, Bigfoot is fully visible. I've scaled it against the sycamore's trunk, a tree with a known diameter of 22 inches. Bigfoot stands just over 9 feet tall, shoulders hunched forward in a way that adds another foot to its reach, arms hanging past its knees. Second 4, 1 step closer. The head lifts. Sunken eyes sit deep under a sloping brow ridge, and there is no visible neck, just a wedge of muscle connecting skull to torso. Second 5, another step. The face becomes distinguishable. A scarred ridge of tissue runs over the left eye socket, the hair gone in that spot, revealing gray skin beneath. The jaw hangs slightly open. Second 6, a third step. The frame fills with Bigfoot's torso, a wall of fur and muscle. Then static. The footage ends. No hikers appear in any of those 6 seconds. Bigfoot was walking toward the creek bed where, according to witness statements, Caleb, Mia, and Jordan had stopped to eat lunch at 2:15 p.m. The missing persons report confirms the 3 teenagers never returned home. Their parents called at 9:47 p.m. Searchers found the site within 4 hours. The physical evidence tells me Bigfoot didn't stalk them. It simply arrived. 3 day packs lay scattered within a 50-foot radius of the creek bed. One pack, Caleb's, was crushed flat as if stepped on by something weighing well over 600 pounds. The fabric hadn't torn. It had compressed, the zippers still zipped, the water bottle inside reduced to shards. Another pack, Mia's, was ripped open with a violence that pulled the seams apart rather than cutting them. A water bottle, granola bars, and a phone were strewn across the ground in a pattern consistent with a single sweeping motion. The third pack, Jordan's, was intact but pinned under a fallen branch measuring 8 feet long and 6 inches thick. I cross-referenced the local weather. No wind that day. The branch didn't fall. It was placed. Near the creek, a flat rock roughly 3 feet across bore a massive bloodstain covering 2 square feet. On the same rock, I found 3 distinct bite marks, each approximately 2 inches in diameter, pressed deep into the stone's surface. Not scratches, not dents. The rock had fractured around each bite. Forensic analysis confirmed human bone fragments embedded in the impressions, specifically fragments of a human femur and tibia. The bite force required to mark stone has been estimated at over 1,600 pounds per square inch. That is not a bear. That is not a mountain lion. That is a Bigfoot biting through a 15-year-old's leg bone and leaving a record of its tooth pattern in solid rock. 50 feet up a mature white oak, searchers found a single half-eaten hiking boot, size 7, male, matching Caleb's footwear. The boot was wedged between 2 branches, measuring just 1.2 inches in diameter. I've climbed enough trees to know that no human could have placed it there. The branches would have snapped under 150 pounds, let alone whatever weight carried that boot up. On the same tree, at 15 feet high, the bark showed 3 deep parallel gouges. Each gouge was spaced roughly 4 inches apart. I held a cast of those gouges next to a cast of Bigfoot's fingerprints from another case. The match was perfect. Bigfoot climbed that tree, boot in mouth, and left its claw marks on the way up. The clearest evidence came from the mud leading away from the rock. A single footprint cast measured 17 inches long, 8 inches wide at the heel, with 5 distinct toe impressions. The stride length between steps was 6.5 feet. That stride carried Bigfoot toward a steep ravine about 40 yards east. But at the ravine edge, searchers found something else. 3 separate handprints pressed into the mud, each one small, consistent with teenage hands. The fingers were splayed wide, the palm heels dug deep, as if each person had tried to stop themselves from being dragged forward. Beyond those handprints, no further human tracks, no footprints, no knee prints, no signs of struggle. Only the 17-inch prints continued, one after another, descending into the ravine. The lead investigator's final note on the report reads, as I paraphrase it, 3 hikers, 1 trail cam that caught nothing but a Bigfoot walking toward an empty frame, and yet the evidence shows they were killed and consumed right there on that rock. The lead investigator wrote that he doesn't know how something that big moves that fast, but it does. Bigfoot that took Caleb, Mia, and Jordan didn't chase them. It simply arrived, fed, and walked away. The handprints at the ravine edge tell me the teenagers saw it coming. They had time to brace, and it didn't matter. The 3rd day of Bigfoot's spree was on the Boston Run Trail in Cuyahoga Valley National Park. The victim was Maya, 26, a competitive trail runner who logged over 70 miles a week on these very paths, but this time she wouldn't return. The only evidence in the case came from her sister, a phone call that lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds, before dissolving into something I've had to rebuild from cellular metadata and acoustic forensics. The evidence paints a clear picture. Maya was running a route she knew cold when something locked onto her. The call came in at 6:42 p.m. Maya's sister answered to the sound of heavy breathing, not from exertion alone, but from something closer to panic. Maya was gasping out words between strides, her pace audibly faster than a casual jog. She said something was tracking her through the trees to her right, staying exactly parallel no matter how she adjusted her line. She described it as not a deer, because deer bolt when a human sprints. This thing was holding formation. Maya pushed her pace to a 6-minute mile, flat-out racing speed on uneven forest trail, and the shape in the timber just kept matching her, step for step, branch for branch. Then her sister heard it. Behind Maya's breathing, behind the crunch of her trail shoes on gravel and leaf litter, came a second set of footfalls, heavy, bipedal. The rhythm was unmistakable, 2 slow, powerful strides for every one of Maya's rapid steps. Each footfall landed with a low thud that vibrated through the phone's microphone, the kind of weight that compresses soil and fractures roots. I've analyzed the cadence against Maya's reported 6-minute mile pace. For a human to match that speed, the stride length would need to exceed 5 feet. This Bigfoot was taking strides of nearly 8 feet, covering ground with an economy of motion that should not be possible for a creature its size. Maya whispered, not spoke, not yelled, whispered, as if saying the word too loudly would bring it down on her. She said the word Bigfoot, and in that whisper, I hear the final moment when denial gives way to certainty. Her sister started shouting into the phone, telling Maya to get off the trail, to climb a rock face, to do anything. But the footfalls behind Maya had changed. They were no longer 2 beats for every one of hers. They were closing, 1 beat for every stride, then 1 beat for every 2 of hers. Bigfoot was accelerating. Then the call flooded with static, not the crackle of a dropped signal or the hiss of distance. This was a roar of digital noise, rhythmic and pulsing, surging and receding at a rate of roughly 1 cycle per second. Forensic audio specialists have identified this signature before. It matches the waveform of infrasound, frequencies below the range of human hearing, but felt in the chest as pressure and in the brain as raw animal terror. Bigfoot was not just chasing Maya, it was broadcasting a low-frequency pulse that would have locked her joints, slowed her thoughts, turned her flight into a stagger. Her sister heard Maya yell, "No." Then the stomp. The audio texts describe it as a pumpkin being dropped from a 2-story window, that wet, explosive collapse of something hollow and fluid-filled. I've listened to the cleaned-up version. It's the sound of a human rib cage caving in under a single downward strike. Bigfoot did not need to chase Maya down. It had already matched her pace for nearly half a mile. When it finally closed the gap, it ended the pursuit with 1 blow. The line went dead at 6:47 p.m., but the phone did not. Cell tower pings tracked Maya's device for another 7 minutes, traveling roughly 4 miles off any marked trail. I mapped the trajectory. The phone moved south-southwest, crossing 2 creek beds and a ridgeline that requires scrambling over a 15-foot sandstone ledge. No human body being dragged could cover that terrain in 7 minutes, but a Bigfoot could. The ping intervals show acceleration, faster and faster, as Bigfoot carried the phone deeper into the park's undeveloped eastern section. Then the ping stopped. Not a slow fade, an abrupt termination. The phone either destroyed or buried. Maya's body has never been found. Her phone has never been found. The only thing that remains is the call, the static, the stomp, and the 7-minute ghost trail of a Bigfoot carrying evidence away from human eyes. In Shawnee State Forest, known as the Little Smokies of Ohio, the victims were Lauren, 38, and her 13-year-old son, Eli. They had planned a bonding hike, a 3-day trek through the most remote terrain in southern Ohio. Search teams found Lauren's day pack within 48 hours, placed on a fallen log with almost ceremonial precision. No tears in the fabric, no scattered contents, just the pack, upright, untouched. Beside it sat a can of bear spray, and that told the real story. The bear spray can was completely empty. Not partially discharged, not leaking. Every ounce of capsaicin had been expelled in a single sustained burst. Around the can, the ground showed a dark, scorched arc of dried spray, radiating outward in a perfect semicircle, roughly 15 feet in diameter. I reconstructed the spray pattern from the forensic photos. The arc suggests Lauren stood her ground, aimed the can, and swept it across a target that was moving laterally in front of her. She did everything right. She waited until Bigfoot was within 20 feet. She depressed the trigger and held it down. The spray pattern shows no flinch, no panic drift. Lauren knew how to use bear spray, but inside that arc, pressed into the mud of the trail, was a single footprint, 17 inches long from heel to toe. The cast shows clear dermal ridges, the friction ridges of a Bigfoot's foot, the same unique swirls that human fingerprints have. No boot tread, no flat impressions. Actual skin. Bigfoot had walked directly through the cloud of burning chemicals and never broken stride. The spray did nothing. Not a cough, not a blink, not a flinch. Bigfoot simply passed through the hot orange cloud as if it were morning mist. The footprint faces the direction of the can, meaning Bigfoot advanced on Lauren while she emptied the entire can into its face. 30 feet from the day pack, a mature oak tree had been peeled of its bark from 2 feet above ground up to 10 feet high. I measured the scars. The bark removal was not random, it was systematic. A single massive creature reaching up and dragging its back against the trunk with enough force to shred the outer layer down to bare wood. The claw marks were spaced 6 inches apart, consistent with the finger spread of a hand that spans nearly 14 inches across the palm. The height of the peeled section confirms Bigfoot's shoulder clearance at over 8 feet. This was not territorial marking. This was a scratch. Bigfoot had used the tree the way a black bear uses a pine, rubbing against it to relieve an itch or to deposit scent, but the force required to strip bark from a mature oak at that height is beyond any bear. Bigfoot had leaned its full weight into that trunk and dragged downward, leaving fur caught in the fresh wood fibers. Search teams reported a smell clinging to the entire area. Wet fur, not the musky odor of a dog or the sharp tang of a bear, but something deeper, almost like a horse that has been standing in rain for days. Underneath that, rotting meat, the sweet, sickly smell of decomposition that hangs in the air and coats the back of the throat. The odor persisted for 3 days after the search teams first arrived, even after rain moved through the forest. I've talked to forest rangers who worked bear kills and mountain lion scavenges. None of them had ever encountered a smell that lingered through a rainstorm. Eli's ball cap was found inside a hollow log 40 yards from the day pack. The log was an old sycamore, split open along its length, the interior chamber just wide enough for a 13-year-old boy to curl into. The cap was not tossed in. It was crushed into a perfect bowl shape, the brim folded under, the crown compressed down until the fabric was as flat as a pressed flower. The force required to crush a baseball cap into that shape without tearing the stitching is specific. Something had pressed the cap down with steady, even pressure. Not a grab, not a twist, but a deliberate flattening. I reconstructed the scene from the impressions. Bigfoot had removed Eli's cap, placed it inside the log, and then pushed down with the heel of its hand until the cap conformed to the curve of the wood. No blood on the cap, no hair, no tissue, just the faint smell of wet fur pressed into the cotton. No bodies were ever found. The search teams expanded their grid to a 2-mile radius and found nothing. No drag marks, no disturbed leaf litter beyond the immediate area of the pack and the tree. It was as if Lauren and Eli had simply stopped existing at that spot. But the bear spray can told me they fought. The footprint told me Bigfoot walked through their best defense without even slowing down. The peeled tree told me Bigfoot was was comfortable here, at home, treating the forest like its own living room. And the crushed ball cap told me that somewhere in these woods, a 13-year-old boy was close enough to his mother that Bigfoot had to remove his hat before it took him. She emptied a whole can of spray into that creature's face. Bigfoot took her son anyway. Then it came back for her. In Wayne National Forest's Wildcat Hollow, the final victim was Eleanor, 68, a retired biologist with 40 years of field experience who knew the difference between animal sign and human interference. She had been documenting fungi for a local mycology club when she wandered off trail near a cluster of sandstone boulders. Her journal was found 3 days later, wedged between two roots, and the last entry tells me everything about what she saw. The handwriting starts firm but grows shakier with each line, the pen pressing harder into the page as if her hand was trembling. Eleanor wrote that something had been watching her since noon. She had mistaken it for a boulder at first, just another moss-covered rock in the jumble of talus. Then the boulder blinked. The creature rose from its crouch, and Eleanor estimated its height at 8 feet of an inch. She was a biologist. She did not exaggerate measurements. She wrote that this was not an animal, but an executioner, and the word choice chills me because it implies intent. Animals kill to eat. Executioners kill because they have been ordered to. Eleanor asked whoever found the journal to tell the rangers that she saw the alpha, a Bigfoot with a scar over its left eye, and that it was not alone. The journal ends there, the final letters trailing off as if she closed the notebook mid-thought. Outside, 70 yards from where the journal was found, search teams discovered a structure that does not belong in any natural forest. A nest of broken saplings woven together into a bowl shape roughly 6 feet across and 3 feet deep. The saplings were green wood, snapped off at the base with a twisting motion, then bent and interlaced in a pattern that required hand strength far beyond any known primate in North America. Bigfoot had built this nest recently. The leaves on the broken branches had not yet wilted. Inside the nest, the evidence turned from strange to horrific. Eleanor's glasses, folded neatly, the lenses unbroken. Her left boot removed cleanly with the laces still tied, meaning the foot had been pulled out rather than the boot untied, and a fragment of her titanium hip replacement chewed into a crumpled ball the size of a walnut. Titanium has a tensile strength of over 100,000 pounds per square inch. Bigfoot had bitten down on that metal implant with enough force to deform it permanently. Human bite marks cannot do that. Bear bite marks cannot do that. The dentition pattern on the crumpled ball shows large, blunt cusps spaced roughly an inch apart, the molar row of a Bigfoot. 100 yards from the nest, Eleanor's camera stood on its tripod, still recording. The battery had run down to 3% by the time searchers found it, but the memory card held 47 minutes of footage. I've reviewed the entire file. The first 30 minutes show Eleanor setting up the camera, adjusting the angle, and then walking away from it toward the boulder field. Her movements are normal at first, purposeful, scientific, the gait of someone surveying a transect. But around the 32-minute mark, something changes. Eleanor reappears from behind a large sandstone outcropping, and her posture is wrong. Her arms hang at her sides, not swinging with her stride. Her head is tilted slightly upward, her eyes fixed on something above the camera's frame. She walks past the tripod without acknowledging it, heading directly toward the nest. The footage shows Eleanor walking willingly. That is the word I have to use, because there is no rope, no weapon, no threat visible in the frame. Her arms are outstretched now, palms forward, the posture of someone approaching a ledge or a cliff edge with full knowledge of what waits below. Her mouth is moving, but the camera's microphone was too far away to pick up words. She reaches the edge of the nest and stops. For 3 seconds, she stands there, arms still out, head still tilted. Then she steps forward into the bowl of broken saplings, and she does not step back out. The final 12 seconds of footage are why I cannot stop thinking about this case. A massive face fills the frame from the left side, moving so smoothly that the camera does not register a shake. Bigfoot has inserted itself between the lens and Eleanor's last known position. The face is not the flat, ape-like reconstruction from old drawings. It is broad, with a pronounced brow ridge that casts deep shadows over the eyes. The left eye is partially closed by a thick scar that runs from the forehead down across the eyelid and onto the cheekbone. The scar is pale against the dark fur, healed long ago, but still visible as a raised line of tissue. No threat display, no bared teeth, just a slow, deliberate head tilt, the same gesture a human makes when examining something unfamiliar. Then the camera goes dead. The battery had power remaining. The memory card was not full. Bigfoot turned the camera off. By day 5, the Rangers had 8 missing persons across 5 separate crime scenes, all within Ohio. I reviewed the victim profiles. The female victims range from 26 to 68. The male victims are all children. No adult men have been taken. That pattern tells me something that the footprints and the nests and the chewed titanium do not. Bigfoot are selecting. They are not attacking every human they encounter. They are choosing specific targets. And the alpha, the scarred Bigfoot that Eleanor identified, is the common denominator across multiple scenes. Witnesses in 2 other instances described a large Bigfoot with a facial scar, always appearing just before the attack escalated. The question that keeps me up is not whether the alpha is doing this alone. The question is, how many more are following its orders?